Come on, Roscoe.
Dios Padre nuestro, donde vives, Jesucristo, donde estoy, amén, feliz Padre.
Meaningful power of attorney. Now, let's see.
You're muttering to yourself again, Watson?
Oh, yes, sorry. It's this word quiz from the Philological Society. You have to find the word suggested by a series of cryptic clues. I won the last one, you know.
Really? And what clue are you struggling over?
Well, it simply says meaningful and power of attorney, and from this you have to find a word that means both.
Significant.
Say what?
Significant. A synonym for meaningful, which can be deconstructed into the phrase, sign if I can't. Hence, power of attorney.
Holmes, I must say it. You never cease to amaze me.
What nonsense.
No, really. I often think that you are truly a genius.
No, I wasn't contradicting you, Watson. I was simply responding to this announcement. The famed spiritualist, Madame Kararsky, will give a demonstration of her ability to communicate with the spirits of our dearly departed. Have you ever heard such rubbish? Yet the woman attracts a rash of paying customers whenever she speaks.
Well, it's not entirely surprising, you know. I mean, don't we all hope to find some proof of an afterlife?
Don't include me in that we, the great hereafter. I can assure you there is nothing but the great here and now.
Well, I am not entirely convinced of that.
What? How can you, a man of science, believe in any of that mumbo-jumbo?
Now, be careful, Holmes. Such hubris could come back to haunt you.
I have no fear of offending the gods, Dr. Watson, for I know there are no gods to offend. Yes, Mrs. Hudson, what is it?
This just arrived for you, sir. The messenger said it was from the Abbey in Whitechapel, where that monk was found dead last week.
Really?
He says the people are saying it was the work of a vampire. So they're awful nervous down the East End right now. And who wouldn't be with a vampire on the loose?
Well, they may have no fear on that account. A vampire is a scientific impossibility. If the monk was murdered, it was at the hands of the living, not the undead. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
There are some things that science can't explain, sir.
Indeed there are, Mrs. Hudson. Indeed there are.
Have it your own way, sir.
Well, what is it?
It's from a brother Marstoke. He begs me, in the name of God, to help him solve what he calls this dark and mysterious business.
Ah.
Oh, you can't expect me to believe that there is any connection between my recent rejection of all things supernatural and the arrival of this letter.
One must never thumb one's nose at the gods, Holmes.
Nonsense. It's merely a coincidence.
Oh, really? I recall a recent occasion where you told me you don't believe in coincidences.
Yes. Well,
It's a small sampling from the South American pantheon of gods and demons.
Not at all the sort of collection one would expect to find in an abbey. I dare say there are those who would consider it a sacrilege.
Quite so, Dr. Watson. But I am not one of those who considers ours the one true religion. God manifests himself in many ways, as does the devil. No doubt you are skeptical of such beliefs, Mr. Holmes.
oh, I must confess to being somewhat agnostic on such issues, Brother Marstoke.
Of course. But should you accept the task I have in mind, I suspect that your belief system may be severely shaken. I acquired the carving you were inspecting during my stay at our mission in Guyana. It represents Desmodo. According to the native peoples, Desmodo is a fearsome demon who usually appears as a giant vampire bat. Belief in him has become more widespread in recent years due to the rise in deaths attributed to him.
And how exactly do his presumed victims die?
Horribly. And slowly. Racked with thirst and painful convulsions.
Well, as I recall, rabies is on the rise in the Americas.
That was our assessment. And due to the large number of vampire bats in the region, it seemed only logical to connect the two.
I assume you had no access to the anti-rabies serum developed by Monsieur Pasteur?
None at all. We were at the mercy of the disease until the arrival of Brother Abel. He had made a study of tropical diseases and their prevention, from which he learned a new technique.
Coating a captured bat with toxins?
Precisely. Are you familiar with the technique, Mr. Holmes?
I assume vampire bats are social creatures that spend a great deal of time in mutual grooming, so any bat coated with poison will be licked clean by other members of the colony, thereby killing them.
Correct. Unfortunately, the theory and practice do not always coincide. Our efforts killed bats, but seemed unable to prevent the spread of the disease. Then, the ritual murders began. The first to die was Brother Lee. He was discovered in the chapel by the mission housekeeper, Senora de la Rosa. He was slumped against the foot of the altar with a large vampire bat upon him. When it flew off, she realized it had been feeding from two open wounds on his neck. On the wall, a terrifying message was scrawled in blood. It read, "From hell. As you have sinned against me, so shall I exact my revenge. The blood of yours for the blood of mine."
A terrifying message indeed, but my suspicions still incline towards a human hand.
Understandably. But I have seen far too much of the devil's work not to believe in him. 2 nights later, he struck again. Word of the horrific events had spread terror amongst the locals. We were holding a meeting to try and calm their fears when Senora de la Rosa's son Hector burst in. He had been to the infirmary to visit Brother Abel, who was making a remarkable recovery from the disease. What he saw terrified him. On the floor, between the beds, he could just make out a large, bat-like silhouette crouching over the body of a man. As the creature turned to look at him, he saw...
What exactly did he see?
He says he saw the face of Desmodo, as clearly as we can see it here.
And Brother Abel, dead in the same manner as Brother Lee, I suppose?
Brother Abel was sick and sleeping, it was Brother Thomas who was watching over him. Needless to say, after this, the local people fled. 2 days later, we closed the mission. The other members returned home, bringing Senora de la Rosa and her son with them. I went on a pilgrimage and prayed that the nightmare was at an end. And so I thought, until my return to England last month. One night shortly after my arrival, I awoke to find a large bat hanging from the mirror above my washstand. On the mirror, scrawled in blood, was another message. It read, "The Wanderer returns. My time has come."
Then the solution is simple. If it is your absence that guarantees the safety of the others, you must leave.
The other members will not hear of it. They believe that with prayer we can fight this demon. After last week, I am not so sure. I was at the home of a friend, Dr. Chagas, when Senora de la Rosa arrived with a message from Brother Sinclair urging me to return to the Abbey. But when we arrived back, we found him dead by the altar, in the same fashion as the two others.
Do you truly believe that some supernatural entity is the cause of these murders?
I am a man of God, not easily frightened. But it is why I have called you, Mr. Holmes.
And how may I succeed where your prayers have failed?
If there is a human hand in this affair, you are the man to find it.
And Scotland Yard? I presume that you've told them what you've told us.
Inspector Jones suspects that my brain has become addled by too many years in the jungle. The coroner's report on Brother Sinclair no doubt confirmed his suspicions.
Yes, I recall reading in the Times that the cause of his death was a massive coronary failure. But what did Inspector Jones make of the marks on his neck?
He's inclined to believe they were caused when Brother Sinclair fell onto his crucifix. A credible theory, but wrong, I assure you. There are forces beyond the grasp of our understanding, and some of them are most decidedly evil.
After supper, Brother Sinclair returned to work on the nativity scene in the children's chapel. I was in the refectory when he suddenly burst in and asked me to go immediately for Brother Marstock.
And that is all? He simply asks you to bring back Brother Marstoke from the home of Dr. Chagas?
Si, signor. That is all.
Were the front doors locked that evening?
Si, signor. They are only unlocked on weekends for the public services.
And it's the only way in, besides the door we've just come through.
No, signor. There is also a door from the graveyard into the crypt, but it is always locked.
Well, thank you, Signora. We shall find our own way back. Oh, by the way, I couldn't help but notice your reaction a moment ago when I mentioned the name Dr. Chagas.
What is it, Signora? Why does the mention of that name make you afraid?
One must never argue with the Don Piro. It is he who brought the curse on this church. It is he. Again.
What on earth was that?
An earth tremor, perhaps?
But she seemed to imply it had happened before.
Yes.
But what of a reaction to Dr. Chagas?
Strange, wasn't it?
She referred to him as a vampiro. Does this word say anything to you?
Other than its phonetic resemblance to the word vampire, no.
Well, in certain European cultures, the vampire is reputed to be the offspring between a vampire and a woman.
I'm surprised you're so well-versed in vampire lore, Watson.
I've done some reading, you know, and, well, like Monsieur Voltaire, I don't believe in vampires, but I am afraid of them. Holmes, all I'm trying to say is that you shouldn't take this talk of vampires and demons too lightly. There could be a kernel of truth at the heart of it.
Perhaps. But until I see evidence to the contrary, I shall continue to believe that vampires and demons are simply the products of fearful imaginations.
From hell, I am he. Not the good shepherd, not the redeemer. He who comes for the blood of those who have sinned against him.
It seems our vampire has left his calling card.
It looks like blood.
Yes. See if you can scratch some off for you. I'm going to have a look down in the crypt. It is not the dead we must fear, my friend, or the undead. It is the living.
Hibernating bats.
Yes.
Well, that would explain the origin of the bat on Brother Marstoke's mirror.
And as for Brother Sinclair's visitor, either he came through the belfry, a rather formidable feat unless you could fly, or he entered the church the same way we did.
Down this corridor. Then the killer is right here in the hermitage.
Precisely. It is therefore impossible to say whether the message threatens all, or just those of you who are in Guyana. So all must remain on their guard. Finally, Brother Marstoke informs me that it is the custom of the order to go out on nightly missions to minister to the poor of the East End. Until further notice, I recommend that these missions be curtailed.
And just what do you know about it, Mr. Holmes? If these walls and St. Justinian himself cannot shield us, then what difference can it make if we venture out into the streets of Whitechapel?
Simply put, it makes it easier for me to protect you.
For you to protect us? Good Lord! What arrogance! Let me tell you something, Mr. Holmes. I have seen this demon's work both in Guyana and here in London. And the one who can protect us has far greater powers than you.
Yes. Brother Calder, no one doubts that there is a demon at work here, but we must not rule out the possibility of a human accomplice. If so, Mr. Holmes is certainly our man.
You are grasping at straws, brother. We all know what we're fighting and why. It was you who first brought the demon's wrath upon us, and it is only since your return that we have once again been cursed by its presence. If Mr. Holmes can be of any service to us, it would be to convince you to leave these walls and never return.
Absolutely not, brother. We cannot allow this fear to divide us.
Brothers, sisters! I no longer have the use of my eyes, but I can see clearly that the devil is trying to divide us. We must not let this happen. We must remain united.
Yes, we must.
But Brother Calder has brought up a good point. Serving the Lord is our life's work, Mr. Holmes. And that work cannot be done by hiding.
Sister Helen is right. If we hide in our rooms, the devil has half the battle won. We must continue our missions.
Very well, then. But may I suggest that none go out alone, and be vigilant at all times, even in broad daylight, for your enemy, whoever or whatever it may be, is certainly the most ruthless and resourceful of foes.
You must remain. You must look.
It appears that the brothers and sisters are not entirely of one voice.
Brother Master, besides Brothers Sinclair and Calder, which other members of the Order were with you in Guyana?
Brother John, Sister Helen, Sister Margaret. Sister Margaret, where is Brother Abel?
He was sleeping so peacefully. I thought it better to leave him in his room.
We must go to him.
Yes. Brother Abel never fully recovered, sir. We moved him to the nuns' quarters where Sister Margaret cares for him. Brother Abel? The first door on the left, Mr. Holmes. In the name... Hector, what on earth are you doing?
I was just coming to ask Brother Abel if he wanted his tea before the door was locked, senor. And then I heard some screaming.
I was sleeping, and it woke me. It grabbed me by the throat.
What was it, Brother Abel?
A great dark thing, and it tried to bite me. But I screamed. Yes, I screamed, and it went out the window. Out the window. Out the window.
Nothing. At least so far as I can see, but it's very dark out there.
Did you see this thing, Hector?
No, senor, I did not.
What do you think now, Mr. Holmes? Is this demon real or not?
I do not know what to think, yet. I assume this is the door Hector mentioned?
Yes.
At what time does it get locked?
Sister Margaret locks it at 8 o'clock every evening.
So it would have been locked at the time of the murder?
Yes.
Does anyone else have a key?
No one. I pray that you can be of assistance to us in this matter, Mr. Holmes.
You mentioned your visit to an old acquaintance on the night of the murder.
Dr. Chagas. Yes, he is now in London to oversee the publication of his research.
When I mentioned his name to Signora de la Rosa, she had a rather remarkable reaction.
Yes, and she used a most interesting word to describe him.
Dampiro?
Yes.
Like all her people, Senora de la Rosa has an ancient fear of Dr. Chagas's field of study. Dr. Chagas is a naturalist. He studies bats. Vampire bats. I should also tell you that we once had an acrimonious disagreement over my decision to poison the bats, but that rift has long since healed, and all my instincts tell me that he is a most honorable man.
Well, our instincts are not always reliable, Brother Master.
Then I suggest you speak with him. He rents lodgings at 4 Renfield Place in Whitechapel.
Very well. But do not fail to summon me should anything else occur. Good night, then.
Well, it seems we have a rare little mystery on our hands.
Rare indeed, and our day's work is not yet done. But I depend on you to inform Inspector Jones of the macabre note in the children's chapel. That should ratchet up his theorizing a notch or two. And then rouse your friends at the Hematology Institute, see if you can get an analysis of that blood sample.
And you? Going to see Dr. Chagas, I assume? Holmes, what is it?
Oh, nothing. Yes, I shall visit Dr. Chagas, and then we'll resume our pursuit at Baker Street in the morning. Driver, come along, Watson.
Right.
Thank you, my man.
Who is it?
Dr. Chagas, my name is Sherlock Holmes. I've been asked by Brother Marstoke to look into the death of Brother Sinclair. May I come in and speak with you?
I cannot help you. Good night, Mr. Holmes.
Perhaps I can help you. There have been developments. The police will soon be knocking at your door. It's a question of motive, you see. And your quarrel with Brother Marstoke.
I take it you're referring to the vampires? The bats, that is.
Is there any other kind?
Come in. Desmodontida tenacitus. Are you familiar with their feeding habits, Mr. Holmes?
Natural history is not my forte, I'm afraid.
Then permit me to enlighten you. The vampire bat first lands close by, then crawls forward onto its sleeping host. Its movements are so gentle and its teeth so sharp. The slumbering host never wakes or feels a thing.
I assume these habits are also what make the bat so easy to catch.
Yes.
Which brings me to your disagreement with Brother Marstoke. What exactly took place?
Bats are some of the most feared and least understood of God's creations. Such ignorance has given them a most unwarranted reputation.
Yet it is a fact they often carry infectious diseases. Was Brother Marstoke wrong in wanting to destroy the roost in Guyana?
I'd studied those bats for 7 years. Never saw any sign that they were infected. And yet they were destroyed.
Yes, I can see how that would be most disturbing.
Disturbing? Yes, Mr. Holmes, it is most disturbing to see your children killed for no apparent reason. Of course, I use the word loosely, but they were like children to me.
You realize your past history and your presence here places you high on the list of suspects.
Mr. Holmes, my presence in your country seems to place me high on every list of suspects. Must be because I'm so tall. Do you really suppose that I could be responsible for these brutal murders?
I make it a habit not to suppose. I draw deductions from the facts.
Then you know that I was here with Brother Marstoke on the night in question. And no one can be in two places at once, can they?
Not unless one were a vampire.
But you do not believe in vampires.
I didn't say that. I simply asked if there were any other kind.
Indeed. One must never be entirely dismissive of ancient beliefs. Anyone who scoffs at them should spend some time in the tropics. It can be a most enlightening experience for the closed mind. Good night, Mr. Holmes.
Good night, Dr. Chagas. A raw night for such work, my good men.
Oh, that's a fact, sir. No drying it on a night like this.
Tell me, are you familiar with Dr. Chaggis, who lives at number 4 there?
Who might be asking?
My name is Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, what you doing down here then, Mr. Holmes? Is it about them vampire murders up at St. Justin's?
Murder it most certainly was, but by a vampire, most certainly not.
Don't mind me contradicting you, sir, but we locals, we got friends up there. And somebody told us they've seen them 2 marks on that monk's neck with their own eyes. You think it's him, then?
No, not at all. But...
Well, he's a queer one, isn't he? He stays in there alone all day and never lets anybody have an eyeball inside, and he only comes out at night. Oh, yeah, see what I mean? Oh, we've all been wondering about him. It's much more since there's another killer on the loose.
You've every reason to be wary of strangers, my friend. But of this I can assure you, the good people of Whitechapel are not the intended victims.
Well, with all due respect, sir, you don't live down here, do you? Well, good night, then.
Brother John, and best wishes for the coming festive season.
God bless you, Mrs. Duncan.
Best wishes to you, too. Good night, then.
Good night.
Good night.
Come along, then, sister.
Come, children, come on. Come on, dear. Inside.
What was that?
What?
Shh! Listen.
Hello in there? Are you hurt? Wait here.
Careful, Father.
Don't be afraid. I shall be right back. Hello? Hello? Where are you? I can't see you. Hello? Are you there? I see you now. I'm coming. There. There, my friend. What is it?
Brother John? Brother John? Are you there? Brother John? Brother John? Brother, is that you?
Sister.
Who is it? How is Brother John?
Who? I don't see any.
What is it?
Vampire! Vampire!
Thank you, my good man.
Ah, Mr. Holmes.
I came as soon as I got your message. How is Sister Helen?
Sleeping. After the police finished their questions, Sister Margaret gave her a sedative.
I must speak with her as soon as she wakes. Did any other members of the Order go out last night?
Why, yes, several of them.
All in pairs?
All except for Brother Calder.
I see. And the exact spot where the murder took place?
An alley opposite 128 Demeter Street.
Were any other members of the mission in the area at the time?
Of course. Whitechapel is our parish.
And you yourself did not go out?
Why, no. But, Mr. Holmes, you persist in thinking that the killer is one of us. And yet...
And yet your shoes are scuffed and splattered with dirt and mud. Not the shoes of a man who remained indoors last evening.
Very clever, Mr. Holmes. But I went with...
The police to identify Brother John's body, yes, of course. I was simply making a point. Truth is often a flexible concept, Brother Marsfield.
Point taken. But surely, Mr. Holmes, you can't suspect that I am in any way involved in these killings.
Simply a question of being thorough. Surely why you hired me. Remain on your guard, brother.
Wish I could say it was good to see you again, sir, but that might be inappropriate given the circumstance.
Indeed.
Certainly doesn't help the mood of things down here. That's why we're keeping out of the papers for now. This is it. Now, the monk's body was found over there. His sister was pinned against the wall there.
And the man who came upon the scene, what exactly did he say?
Oh, not much. So the clock was striking 9:15 as he went to put the rubbish out. And all he saw was a tall, dark figure with what looked like giant wings leaning over the nun. Now, before he could get a good look, whatever it was fled the way we just came.
Fled, not flew. Not so much for giant wings.
Yes, well, I don't know much about this vampires thing, sir. I mean, the people around here, they certainly seem to have their minds made up about this foreign gentleman, Dr. Chaggis.
What about Dr. Chaggis?
Well, they seem convinced it's him, sir. And he was seen entering his premises an hour before dawn. I believe Inspector Jones is questioning him right now. Saying arrest is in the offing.
Yes. Thank you, Inspector.
Thanks, sir.
Sherlock Holmes to see Inspector Jones.
Oh, Mr. Holmes.
Good time.
Out with it, man. Where were you? You prefer to... Holmes. Who let you in here?
Jones, I must speak with you.
There's nothing to discuss. I thanked Dr. Watson for telling me of your discovery in the Children's Chapel, but I believe I already have the man who wrote it, so I won't be needing any more help. Now, kindly close the door on your way out.
As a return favor, might I at least ask on what grounds you're making your assumptions?
Assumptions? No. Facts. In order of discovery, fact one, his long and bitter dispute with Brother Marstoke gives him motive.
Inconclusive.
Fact two, he was observed leaving his house shortly before Brother John's murder and didn't return until just before dawn.
Is it a crime to stay out all night?
No. But fact three, he refuses to say where he was all that time and has no one to provide an alibi.
He had someone.
Who?
Me. I was right here with him, talking of vampires. The, bat variety, of course. Not humanoid?
If you're trying to fool me, Holmes.
Not at all. The workman told you he disturbed the killer at precisely 9:15, correct?
Aye, correct.
Yet I was here until shortly after that clock there struck 9. After which I saw him leave and go north towards Whitechapel Road some 2 or 3 minutes later, in the opposite direction to Demeter Street. And no man could backtrack and cover that distance in 10 minutes. Unless, of course, you think he could fly.
You hear that out there, Holmes? I don't pay much heed to all this talk of vampires and such. And I little think that if we dragged Dr. Chagas out into the sunlight, he would dissolve into dust. But I intend to put an end to all this hysteria before it gets out of hand.
So you'll arrest an innocent man?
Fact 4. The gloves he was wearing. Notice the streaks of blood on the right hand. Oh, we'll wait and see what the analysis tells us. And then maybe we'll send someone out to synchronize the nation's clocks and watches. Sergeant! Sergeant, quickly!
Down the alley! You! Around to the next street! Sergeant, come with me! Step aside! Step aside!
If things get out of hand, Holmes, I'll hang it around your neck.
He holds you responsible.
I hold myself responsible. At least I shall if there are murderous consequences.
And you are convinced that Dr. Chagas is our man?
No. But neither am I convinced that he is not. But it will make little difference if the mob catches up to him.
Holmes, you mustn't torture yourself over something you cannot control. Do as you always do. Stick to the chase, follow through logically, and as ever, you will prevail.
You're right, of course, my friend. But what happened to keeping my mind open to the possibility of the supernatural?
Well, keeping one's mind open to one possibility doesn't mean ignoring all others, especially the logical ones.
Right you are again, Dr. Watson. Come along, then.
Very well. Where to?
To see Brother Marstoke. Did you get the results from the Hematology Institute?
Definitely not human blood.
Just as I thought. Bat's blood, most likely. And what did the coroner conclude, Dr. Watson?
It's massive heart failure. Seems he was quite literally frightened to death.
In the same manner as the others.
Look here, Watson, what do you make of it?
2 circular incisions, approximately ½ an inch in diameter and 1.5 inches apart.
Yes.
Curious. Whatever it was that bit Brother John is missing a lower mandible.
What on earth do you mean?
There are no signs of abrasion or contusion from the lower teeth, which there would be had he been bitten. So, either his assailant was missing a lower mandible, or those wounds were made by some other means.
Perhaps whatever attacked him had teeth sharp enough to pierce the skin without biting.
It's possible, but it is not the natural order of things for any creature to attack in such a way.
I wasn't referring to the natural order of things.
Yes, well, we must remain divided on that score, Brother Marstoke, at least for the time being. And now, if she's awake, I think it's time for us to speak with Sister Helen.
Of course. Forgive me if I do not accompany you. I must attend to my devotions. You might find Inspector Jones still there. He got here shortly before your arrival.
I see. Thank you. Does it occur to you, Watson, that Brother Marstoke seems rather too insistent with his fears of the supernatural?
I think not. I think he wishes for you to keep an open mind.
I do, which is why of late I've begun to entertain the thought that he does protest too much.
You can't possibly think he has a hand in all this.
My studies of the criminal mind have taught me that the more violently twisted the mind, the more violently twisted the logic.
And what reason would he have?
That remains to be seen. Sister?
Vigilant as ever, I see.
Yes, quite.
Not the lumpy kind, nor the brown kind. The tiny white crystals. Do you understand?
Yes, senor.
What did I say?
Not the lumpy kind, not the brown kind, but the white crystals.
Oh, right, right. Good. Off we go then. Oh, hello. What's this then? Visitors?
Good day, Brother Abel. May we come in?
Yes, yes, come in, come in. They want to have a word with me, Hector. Go on then.
Senor.
I do hope you're feeling better today.
Oh, thank you. What? Oh, better. Oh, yes, much better, much better.
Good. Then perhaps you wouldn't mind if we asked you a question or two about the fright you received last night?
Oh, fright, yes, yes. A terrible fright. Terrible fright. I'm going to paint the bell tower, you know.
Oh, yes, I see you were working on a new model, the Hermitage, is it?
No, this is St. Justinian's.
Oh, yes, of course it is. It's very good, too.
Yes, this is St. Justinian's. And I'm painting the bell tower.
Yes, well, we must be going, Brother Abel. Goodbye.
Right.
Oh. Goodbye, then.
Oh, well, good day, Inspector.
I'm glad to see you can still smile, Mr. Holmes. But if I were you, I'd be a worried man. And since you're here, you might try praying that we find Chagas before he kills again.
I appreciate the advice, but prayer is one thing I'm not very good at.
Come now. It's not that hard. All it takes is a little humility. Then again, you're not very good at that either, are you? I know you're here as a guest of Brother Marstock, but just make sure you limit your interferences to the grounds of the Abbey. I'll be keeping my eye on you, Holmes.
Well...
Blessed be the name of Saint Justinian, who through our Lord shall deliver us from this evil. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on
And the voice, can you describe it?
Well, it was only a whisper. A deep, male, gravelly whisper. Inspector Jones seems convinced that it was Dr. Chagas camouflaging his voice.
And what do you think?
It may have been, but it was unrecognizable to me.
So it could have been Inspector Jones himself, or even me, for that matter.
Exactly.
And what of the killer's accusation? How do you think you might have sinned against him?
Surely Brother Marstock has given you gentlemen all the details. Suffice it to say that Brother John and I both supported his decisions about the bats.
Forgive my bluntness, sister, but Dr. Watson was not referring to hypothetical sins against gods or demons. Is there any way you and the others may have grievously offended someone else, either within the order or without?
I take it You do not admit the possibility of diabolical intrusions into human affairs, Mr. Holmes.
That doesn't answer the question, sister.
I can think of no other offense to either gods or humans that we may be responsible for.
One last thing, and then we shall let you rest. I wanted to think back to the exact moment when the door opened and surprised your assailant. Before the worker called out, did you hear anything?
Such as?
I have no wish to prompt you, sister. But please, go back in your mind. Think.
I heard a sharp groan, and then nothing.
Try again.
No, nothing.
And again.
No, nothing. Oh, wait. There was something. A short, sharp sound, like something scraping.
Excellent. Well, thank you, sister. We shan't disturb you any longer.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, there was one more thing now that I recall.
Yes?
It's not much, but there was a faint odor when the thing drew near me. A slight, pungent and oily smell.
Good. Very good. Well, thank you again, sister.
What was that all about?
I was merely confirming a deduction.
Which was?
Not yet, my friend, lest it tempt us into theorizing before we have all the evidence. Sister Helen's reactions, however, did suggest a line of inquiry, something you yourself observed at the assembly meeting.
Yes, Brother Calder. I suspect that beneath the calm surface of St. Justinian's, turbulent waters flow.
Exactly. Let's plumb those depths, shall we?
Mr. Holmes, surely you are off the mark.
Yet when I put a similar question to Sister Helen, she had a most peculiar nervous reaction. And reflexes do not lie.
And what might her reaction imply? Some collusion in a grievous disagreement that has impelled one of us to kill the others? Surely that is the stuff of penny fiction.
It is the stuff of the Daily News. Brother Marstoke, I understand that a code of loyalty binds you, but if there is any internal conflict here which...
Mr. Holmes, our order encourages lively debate, but I do not believe that any of our differences has any bearing on this matter. Ultimately, we all strive to be selfless.
If I may be so bold, Brother Calder's reaction at the meeting last night was not entirely selfless.
Brother Calder's reaction was not a sign of enmity, it was a sign of fear. And who can fault him for his fear?
Then I assume you have no objection if I speak with him?
None at all. But he is not here. He told me before leaving last evening that he had decided to stay the weekend with his sister in Bloomsbury.
Does anyone else know of his whereabouts?
No one.
And the sister, do you know her address?
Madame Karofsky, Blenheim Row, I believe.
Yes, well, thank you, Brother Marstoke. Good day, then.
Madame Karofsky. Well, Holmes, you must admit this case certainly has its share of bizarre convergences.
It does indeed. And so, on the pretext of meeting with Madame Karofsky, I shall now speak with her brother.
Alone?
Yes. But we must now take turns keeping nightly vigil. I hope you don't mind taking tonight's watch, my friend.
Not at all, not at all.
But first, I want you to drop into the offices of the London Transport Commission.
Transport Commission? Whatever for?
Remember last night when I pulled up at the site?
My brother has told me of this affair at the Abbey and has brought me certain objects that I may help him. When I lay my hands upon them, I receive certain insights.
Really? Such as?
This, for example, this belonged to Brother Sinclair. I had but to pass my hand over it, and immediately I knew that this was a man of a very nervous and careless disposition.
It is true, Mr. Holmes. She has never laid eyes on him, and yet she immediately identified his most noticeable characteristic.
Most noticeable, yes. For even without the benefit of a sixth sense, I can see that the watch case is polished smooth, indicating that its owner would handle it often, turning it compulsively in his nervous grasp. Yet the crystal is cracked and the case dented in places, indicating that it often fell from those same trembling hands.
I have no wish to play parlor games with you, Mr. Holmes.
Nor I with you. Let's just say we reached the same conclusion, but by different means. But, Brother Calder, I must ask you about your relationship with Brother Marstoke.
I make no secret of my opposition to him.
Yet you do hold him responsible for the curse, do you not?
One does not invite the devil across one's threshold, Mr. Holmes, and then expect him to quietly leave afterwards. Even now, Brother Marstoke insists on lining his walls with these diabolical primitive artifacts. This is an outrage which would offend any true Christian.
I take it you believe he is an unworthy leader. Was it so in Guyana?
Brother Marstoke lacked missionary zeal. But I was alone in my objection to him until Brother Abel arrived from England. How different things would have been had he not been cut down by this dreaded disease.
How might they have been different?
Brother Abel was outraged by the sacrileges that Brother Marstoke allowed to continue. And it was he who pinpointed the bats as the source of the plague and insisted that they be eradicated.
It was Brother Abel who wanted the bats destroyed, not Brother Marstoke.
Oh, absolutely. But Marstoke wouldn't listen to him. Instead, he allied himself to the devil's disciple and did nothing until Brother Abel himself was stricken.
The devil's disciple. I take it you mean Dr. Chaggis?
Indeed. What sort of a man would live with bats and call them his children?
I fail to understand. If Brother Marstoke was allied to the devil, why are he and his followers now being stalked by the same?
One doesn't renege on the devil, Mr. Holmes. One doesn't even negotiate with him.
Well, I thank you for your time. And I assure you, I shall bring this devil to heel before he kills again. Stay on your guard, Brother Calder. Madam, I shall see myself out.
A moment, Mr. Holmes. I've just had a most peculiar sensation, like a flash. I saw a church. The church may yet be your salvation, Mr. Holmes.
Miracles do happen. Madam.
Well, this is most reassuring having you here, Dr. Watson. Should I have a bed made up for you?
Oh, thank you. No, that won't be necessary.
Right, well, if there's anything, don't hesitate to summon me.
Thank you. Oh, there is one thing. When the brothers or sisters go out at night, how do they get back in?
They simply ring the bell and Senora de la Rosa lets them in, but there will be no ringing tonight. They have all stayed in. Good night, Dr. Watson.
Good night.
Happy Christmas.
Here you go, sir. Lovely old chestnuts.
Thank you very much.
Get your hot chestnuts.
You dodged a cockroach by a cat's ear, you did. Are you all right, then?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you, my man. Call on me sometime.
Thank you, sir.
Frederick, come here. Frederick, come here. You must be here.
Oh, excuse me, madam. I do beg your pardon.
You there, stop! Good evening, Dr. Watson.
Brother Calder. But I thought you were staying with your sister.
I intended to, but I decided to return early for Brother John's funeral.
And is it always your custom to come in through the crypt?
The crypt? I came in, as always, through the main door.
But I didn't hear the bell.
There was no need to ring. Hector was outside taking air. Said he couldn't sleep.
And where is he now?
I assume the air did its job, because he went to bed, as I intend to. Good night, Dr. Watson.
For as much as it hath pleased Almighty God of his great mercy, to receive unto himself the soul of our dear brother, we therefore commit his body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust.
Hector confirmed his story.
Always willing to lie for him.
Do you think it was Brother Calder?
One could certainly construct a case against him, but it is equally true of others.
Jesus Christ, who shall change our mortal body, that it may be like unto his glorious body, according to the mighty working, whereby he is able to subdue all things to himself.
O merciful God, the Father of our Lord Jesus
Por favor,
Christ,
Señor.
who is the
I must
resurrection
speak with you
and the
later.
life, in whom whosoever believeth shall live, though he
After the
die.
service, take Brother
And
Mask at the
whosoever
side, will you, my
liveth
friend?
and believeth
Find out
in
how the
him
De La Roses came into his
shall
employ.
not die eternally. Who also hath taught us.
I have told you who is responsible, Signor. And yet I see you look with suspicion at my son.
Until a case is closed, Signora, I have a habit of looking at everyone with suspicion.
He is just a simple-minded child.
Perhaps. But as Dr. Watson will attest, murder is not the private domain of adult geniuses. Anyone can do it.
Indeed.
What would be his reason? The monks had always been generous to us.
And what do you suppose prompted this generosity? Christian charity or guilt, perhaps?
I don't know what you mean, Signor.
Yes, you do. Brother Marstoke was most candid with me about how you came into his employment. Were you not left penniless and without support after Hector's father and brothers were carried off by the disease, and was not Hector himself bitten but miraculously survived?
Surely such tragic losses made you and your son angry, Signora. And if you believe the bats are responsible for the disease, then just as surely that anger must extend to those who allowed them to survive. I begin to see a thread, Watson, but a little verification is in order. Good day, Brother Abel.
Oh, gentlemen, come in. I'm having tea. Tea that Hector brought. And I'm just finishing painting. Painting?
Yes, just about finished, I see.
Oh, yes, almost finished. Almost finished.
St. Justinian's, is it?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Well, keep up the good work. Good day.
Oh, yes. Good day.
Yes, Brother John and I always went out together.
And were there any people you visited on a regular basis?
Of course.
And since your return from Guyana, have you ever had the impression that you were being followed?
Followed?
Mm-hmm.
By someone from the Abbey?
Yes.
Why, no. At least, not that I'm aware. Brother John never mentioned any such suspicion.
What about Hector? Did you ever encounter him while you were out in the evening?
Hector? Yes. Brother John did mention seeing him once or twice. But he's always running errands.
Yes, of course. Sister, if you don't mind, I should like to perform a little experiment. As you can see, the pieces of the puzzle are almost in place, my friend. And I have an inkling how to find the one man who can surely provide the missing link.
You're going after Chagas, then?
Yes, and you.
Good day, sir.
Hello.
Good day.
And you are going to the shop of Messrs. Heward and Parker in Pudding Lane.
Heward and Parker?
Mr. Holmes. I've been expecting you.
Myotis. The greater mouse-eared bat, I believe. Following our first meeting, I spent the evening poisoning myself with tobacco and reading Professor Litinsky's Bats of the Ancient World.
A seminal tome. And what else did you learn?
The sad facts of their decline. One of the largest species in Northern Europe, and one of the rarest. Possibly due to contamination of their habitat by wood preservatives used on attic timbers.
If only others would express such interest, Mr. Holmes. But bats have few friends and are not perceived as useful. So sad, is it not?
Sad indeed.
Then you can understand why they need my protection.
And yet you knew your discovery must be kept secret at all costs, lest they be destroyed. Hence your silence and lack of alibi when questioned by the police.
Yes. But sadly, their days here are already numbered. This old building will soon be torn down to make room for the future. And the future seems to have no place for them.
You're a noble man, Dr. Chagas. And I wish I could help with your mission, but I cannot. However, I can clear your name. I simply need to know the truth about your dispute with Brother Marstoke.
The truth? The truth is simply this.
Arrest him! I warned you, Holmes. I warned you.
Jones, listen to me. I can prove you have the wrong man if you give me this one night.
No more deals. Take him away.
The blood on my glove. It's not human blood, is it? Is it?
So, you sensed that someone was behind you?
Yes.
We will get to the bottom of this, and without further loss of life, I assure you.
I wish I shared your confidence, Dr. Watson.
An urgent message for you, Singer.
Thank you. It's from Holmes. Brothers and sisters, I've received some rather alarming news from Mr. Holmes. It appears he's been arrested and is therefore no longer able to help you through your ordeal.
But more importantly, he states that, contrary to all his beliefs, he has become convinced that some demonic presence is indeed bent upon destroying us. For this reason, I have decided that the only safe course of action is for me to leave St. Justinian's.
Brothers, sisters, brothers.
It is I who brought this curse upon you. Therefore, I beg your forgiveness, and will spend the night in prayer that when I leave in the morning, this demon leaves with me and leaves you in peace. God be with you.
Your tempting fate, being out here alone.
I must pray before I leave, Brother Calder. Go back inside and keep yourself safe.
te, adoramos te, glorificamos te, gratias, agimus tibi, propter magnum, gloriam tuam, Domine tus Christus,
Let he who has not cast the first stone. Brother.
Well, Mr. Holmes.
Stop or I'll shoot! Good Lord, it's happening again. Watch out! What in God's...
See you in hell.
Come along, quickly! Are you all right, Holmes?
Yes, I'm fine.
That was a close call.
Help him, lads. What known creation was that? An earthquake?
It was often in an earth tremor. Here is your vampire, gentlemen.
Brother Abel. Good God.
Here are his fangs. A simple garden claw, with the middle tine removed.
New pipe, Holmes?
Yes. I lost my favorite in that little fracas the other night.
Oh, pity.
But if not an earthquake, what was it, Mr. Holmes?
A subsidence. Would you kindly explain, Dr. Watson?
Oh, yes, of course. Well, you see, knowing that the London Transport Commission is currently expanding its underground line to Whitechapel, I went to their offices to inquire about the direction of the line, and, well, as Mr. Holmes deduced, their tunneling runs beneath the nave and has weakened the foundations, causing the occasional shifting.
Good heavens, is it in danger of collapse?
Well, let us hope not. But the tunneling has been stopped, and the Commission has given assurances that their engineers will immediately devise a method of structural reinforcement.
Oh, praise be to God. At least for his timing. It certainly saved your life, Mr. Holmes.
Indeed, Brother Marstow. The Lord works in strange ways.
It was a most remarkable event. All the more remarkable since it was the second of such events in a matter of hours.
Oh, and the first?
The first was when Inspector Jones changed his mind and agreed to my plan. It's not easy for a proud man to admit he was wrong. Yet for the first time in our long and antagonistic relationship, Inspector Jones suddenly converted to my point of view. It is almost a miracle.
And what caused this conversion?
Dr. Chaggis, perhaps you'd explain about the gloves.
Of course. My bloody gloves convinced Inspector Jones that he had the right man. Afraid that I would not get justice and presented with an unexpected opportunity, I therefore fled. Fortunately, as I was doing so, Mr. Holmes was making an important discovery. Before Inspector Jones's arrival, I had just finished preparing a specimen. Mr. Holmes saw the specimen and drew the logical conclusion that the blood was therefore bat's blood.
But of all people, what made you suspect Brother Abel?
Due to his condition and the attack he cleverly feigned, I initially dismissed him as a suspect. But then I saw him drinking tea.
Tea? I fail to see the connection.
The instant I saw the message in the children's chapel, one thing became immediately apparent. The writing tilted slightly to the left, suggesting that the writer was left-handed. The next day, I noticed not only Brother Abel holding his cup in his left hand, but he had a smudge of ink on the edge of his palm, suggesting that he also wrote with the same. And so Brother Abel soon became my prime suspect. Further observation soon confirmed my suspicions. When Sister Helen's aggressor reached out to touch her, she became aware of a pungent, oily smell, and so we contrived a little visit, during which we conspired to take a small sample of the oil paints Brother Abel used on his models. Sister Helen later confirmed that it was indeed the same odor. At the same time, I noticed on his workbench a receipt from a builder's supply shop on Pudding Lane. It suggested a solution to my remaining dilemma. To move freely back and forth through the connecting door, Brother Abel would need a key. But how did he get it? I noticed Sister Margaret's habit of wearing her key on a cord around her waist. It would be easy enough to remove for a short time while she slept, then duplicated.
Ah, hence my visit to the locksmith in Pudding Lane.
Precisely. Among the various items listed on the receipt was putty. It therefore occurred to me that Brother Abel had simply made an impression and instructed Hector to have a duplicate made on his next journey for supplies.
That explains all, but one thing, Mr. Holmes. You seem to know his technique for imitating the vampire's bite. How so?
I didn't know with certainty the actual technique he employed, but my visit to the crime scene suggested a possibility. I noticed on the brick wall 2 marks, made recently and by something sharp, possibly metallic. Sister Helen later confirmed hearing a short, sharp, metallic sound when her attacker was startled. I therefore deduced that he had something in or attached to his hand with which he could easily duplicate his vampire's bite. The next day at the funeral, the sight of a gardener with a similar implement confirmed my suspicions. And there you have it, gentlemen. The Whitechapel vampire has been laid to rest.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I hope you don't think I intentionally misled you about my quarrel with Brother Abel.
You told me what you thought was pertinent, but I knew Dr. Chaggis could provide the missing link. Perhaps you'd do so again, since Dr. Watson wasn't present.
By all means. Brother Marstoke told you that we had argued over his decision to eradicate the bats. Brother Calder said it was Brother Abel who argued for their destruction.
An outright contradiction.
But both are true. It was only after Brother Abel was stricken with the disease that Brother Marstoke changed his mind. And then we came into confrontation.
And therein lies the crux of the matter. Brother Abel was already outraged by your liberal attitudes and jealous of your leadership and support, was he not?
Indeed he was.
When he was finally stricken with the terrifying disease, he became a bitter, broken man with an unrepenting lust for revenge. So ferocious and unfailing was his rage that, feigning madness and incapacitation, he waited over a year for your return, and the opportunity to exact his vengeance. But why did you not tell me of your conflict with him?
Guilt has a remarkably binding effect on the tongue, Mr. Holmes. Well, I thank you deeply for your efforts, Mr. Holmes. I leave a troubled but wiser man.
Such is life, Brother Marstoke. A series of lessons with the greatest for the last.
And I, too, would like to thank you for your efforts on my behalf, Mr. Holmes.
My pleasure, and good luck with your quest. Gentlemen?
Dr. Watson.
Good day. A series of lessons with the greatest for last. That's a very good, Holmes. Very good indeed. Well, tell me, have you drawn any lessons from this? An awareness of forces beyond the realm of the senses, perhaps?
I'm beginning to suspect that you are in the employ of Madame Karabsky, my learned friend.
No, I'm simply curious to know if you now consider such things. After all, You did admit that the timing of the subsidence was remarkable.
Remarkable, yes. Well, proof of divine intervention? I still think not.
And what of Madame Kravsky's prediction that you would be saved by the church?
I've been told the same by every churchman I ever met.
Ah.
Yes, Mrs. Hudson.
A tradesman just dropped this off for you, sir. Says he saved your life the other night. Saved your pipe, too.
My pipe? What a sterling fellow. Please, show him in.
Can't do that, sir. He's gone already.
Did you get his address, his name, any way to contact him?
Says his name is Church, sir. Mr. Reginald Church.